Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be breaking down my week number 7 top 36 wide receiver rankings and tiers for the 2024 fantasy football season. But before we can get into things, I would like to ask, if you are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, then please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you do leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter or X, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. So without further ado, let's get into my week number 7 top 36 wide receiver rankings and tiers for the 2024 fantasy football season. We begin with the no-brainer wide receiver 1 tier with my wide receivers 1 through 5. At number 1, we have Justin Jefferson, wide receiver of the cold like Minnesota Vikings, going up against the Detroit Lions at home in Minnesota. Justin Jefferson is always a great bet to finish inside of the top 12. And in a matchup here up against the Detroit Lions that could end up being very high scoring, I like Justin Jefferson to do exactly that. In my opinion, he is the best wide receiver in the National Football League, and I believe in him heavily week in and week out. Coming out of the bye week, I expect a heavy dosage of Justin Jefferson in this game. Sam Darnold has proven all of the haters wrong, and I believe Justin Jefferson will have his best game yet this week up against the Lions defense as a top 5 wide receiver. At number 2, we have Malik Neighbors going up against the Philadelphia Eagles at home in MetLife. Now, Neighbors has cleared the concussion protocol. While he has missed the last 2 games, when this man has been healthy, he has been a force to be reckoned with. Wide receiver 32 to come out the gate, sure, not the best, but then after that, he just put belt to ass. Wide receiver 3, 4, and 6 over the last 3 games, averaging 12 or more targets over the last 3 games. The Eagles' defense isn't the best, and I expect Malik Neighbors to get 12 plus targets in this spot. At number 3, we have Jamar Chase of the Cincinnati Bengals going up against the Cleveland Browns in Cleveland. Jamar Chase has kind of had a very up and down season. Wide receiver 28, 47, 2, 19, 1, and 29, but he's another one of those guys that I believe is in the upper echelon of wide receivers in the National Football League. Joe Burrow has looked very good. The offense last week was relatively limp dick, and I expect them to take a nice honey pack this week and play a lot better. So I love Jamar Chase in this spot as a top 5 wide receiver. At number 4, we have Amon-Ra St. Brown going up against the Minnesota Vikings in Minnesota. Now, last week, despite the fact that the Dallas Cowboys got a train ran on them by the Detroit Lions, Amon-Ra St. Brown only went 4 for 4 like he was at Wendy's for 37 yards, but he also got a bailout touchdown to kind of save his day as the wide receiver 27. Amon-Ra St. Brown's a reliable top 12 option every single week, and even with the matchup up against the Vikings not being the best, we know Amon-Ra St. Brown could get 8 plus targets in any given spot. So up against the Vikings this week, he still belongs in the elite tier. To close out the no-brainer wide receiver 1 tier, we got AJ Brown, my wide receiver 5, going up against the Giants in MetLife. Now, AJ Brown has only played in 2 games this season. Week number 1 in the BBL Bowl in Brazil, wide receiver 7 in that game. Last week, he was back like he never even left, wide receiver 3. This week, I expect another top 5 game. I think the Eagles offense that didn't necessarily look the best last week pushes things into overdrive for the Saquon Barkley revenge game. And next up, we move into the slightly lower tier no-brainer wide receiver 1s with my wide receiver 6 through 12. At number 6, we have Chris Godwin going up against the Baltimore Ravens on Monday Night Football. Mike Evans' availability is up in the air. Chris Godwin up against the Ravens. This matchup, you can smell it through the screen. It reeks of fantasy points. It reeks of a back and forth, no defense, all offense type of matchup, and Chris Godwin has been feasting this season. 3 games inside of the top 8, and last week up against the Saints in New Orleans, he was the wide receiver 1, over 120 receiving yards, 11 receptions on 13 targets, 2 touchdowns. This week, if Mike Evans doesn't play, I'm moving him up into the top tier. If Mike Evans does play, I feel very confident in my ranking here as the wide receiver 6. Baker Mayfield has been playing out of his mind, and there's no reason to believe that that will stop up against a not so hot Ravens defense. At number 7, we have Drizzy Drake London going up against the Seattle Seahawks at home in Atlanta. Outside of week number 1, where he was the wide receiver 80 and only had 3 targets, he has been a 7 or more target player in every single game and a top 20 wide receiver in every single game outside of one game, which was up against the Saints as the wide receiver 34. Back-to-back games inside of the top 15, and the Seahawks defense reeks of being fraudulent. I think that Drake London and Kirk Cousins could combine here to have his best game of the season. These are all guys that, while they aren't in the tippy top, the number 1 tier, the S tier, the no-brainer wide receiver 1s, these are all guys that I could see being the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy football, and I love his odds this week up against Seattle. Next up, we got Deontay Johnson going up against the Washington Commanders in Washington. Now, Deontay Johnson is questionable for what feels like, honestly, the 7th fucking time this season. It feels like every single week when we talk about the wide receivers that he's questionable. He's just permanently questionable, but he's played in every single game. He's been a top 12 wide receiver in 3 of the last 4 games, and the only game where he didn't really show up, besides the games with Bryce Young when he was on the struggle bus, was up against an elite Bears defense. So going up against a Commanders defense that is the exact opposite of elite, I wouldn't even wipe my behind with that defense. I expect Deontay Johnson to go to Pound Town. Him and Andy Dalton are going to form an Eiffel Tower over that defense. So Deontay Johnson, as long as he plays, he is going to be a great option. At number 9, we got Stephon Diggs of the Houston Texans going up against the Green Bay Packers in Lambeau. With no Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs is the clear alpha wide receiver in this offense. 4 straight games with 7 or more targets and multiple games with 9 or more targets. Last week, he was the wide receiver 13. He found the end zone up against the Patriots in Foxborough, and he also had a touchdown in that game, so 77 yards and a touchdown, 6 receptions. This week, I got him finishing the highest he has since week number 1, where he was the wide receiver 9, and that is exactly where I have him ranked this week. This is another game that has all of the upside to be the highest scoring matchup on the week. Next up, we got Zay Flowers. Now, Zay Flowers is incredibly easy to break down every single week. If the Baltimore Ravens are in the game or losing the game, Zay Flowers is going to get the ball forced down his throat. If the Ravens are up by multiple touchdowns, they're just going to hand the ball to Derrick Henry 1 gazillion times and mosey out there with a W. This game up against the Bucs feels like the game script that's positive for Zay Flowers, meaning it's a back-and-forth affair. It is a game where the Ravens are trailing or they're leading slightly, right? I would be shocked if either one of these teams really ends up stomping on the grave of the other, and that should lead to Zay Flowers having a top 14, top 12-ish game. Best game on the season last week as the wide receiver 6. Back-to-back games with 110 or more yards. He hasn't scored a touchdown since week 2 up against the Raiders, so if he could find the end zone this week, he could be feeling nicey as the number 1 wide receiver. Next up, we got Terry McLaurin, F1, scary Terry McLaurin, going up against the Panthers. Anytime you got a wide receiver 1 going up against the Panthers defense, they are going to have a 5-star buffet on that ass. Wide receiver 5, last week, best week of the season, multiple games with a touchdown or more. Again, the Panthers defense is bottom of the barrel, and Terry McLaurin and Jaden Stormy Daniels are going to be able to perform in a big way in this game. To close out this tier, we got Jaden Riley Reed going up against the Houston Texans. Now, Jaden Reed is a very reliable wide receiver too. He's going to finish inside the top 24 basically every single week, and Jaden Reed's the number 1 receiver on a Jordan Love offense that in any given game could put up 30+ points. So while he hasn't necessarily been as dominant as he was in week number 1, where up against the Eagles in Brazil, he had 2 touchdowns over 130 yards. The upside is there, and again, in a high-scoring matchup, I think Jaden Reed deserves a spot inside of the top 12. Next up, we move into the high-end wide receiver 2 train. tier here with Cooper Kupp. Now, Cooper Kupp, there's a lot of question marks that we're about to be discussing, and Cooper Kupp is one of them. Ankle, questionable, game, time, decision. So you might have to wait until an hour before the game at 4 o'clock against the Raiders to know if he plays or not. So you want to make sure if you have Cooper Kupp, and we don't know by the time things kick off at 1 o'clock, that you read into things and you have a backup plan. You have a backup plan in case he does not play. If he plays, Cooper Kupp is in your lineup. I don't care if he's walking out there like Patchy the fucking pirate with one leg, if he's got 2 legs, if he has 3 toes on one leg. I don't care. Cooper Kupp is one of the best receivers in fantasy football. In week 1, the motherfucker had 21 targets. Now, do I expect him to get 21 targets against the Raiders? Of course not, but he's going to get 10. He could get 15. He could get 20. And when he plays, you want him in your lineup. The only reason why he's not ranked higher is because I'm nervous on the fact if he's going to end up playing or not. Next up, we got Mike Evans, another guy that I'm petrified if he's going to end up playing or not going up against the Ravens on Monday Night Football. If you have Mike Evans and you have an open spot, just pick up Sterling Shepard, because if Mike Evans doesn't play, you can instantly plug and play Sterling Shepard as a fine wide receiver 3/flex range type of a guy. Mike Evans, when he plays, you want him in your lineup. Last week, he was the wide receiver 69. Very nice. I like. In reality, we don't actually like that, but we expected it. Going up against the Saints, Mike Evans is just typically terrible, but going up against the Ravens is a clear bounce back spot as long as he's good to go. Next up, we got GW, and we ain't talking about George Washington. We're talking about Garrett Wilson of the New York Jumbo Jets going up against the Steelers in Pittsburgh. But before we talk about the rest of the wide receivers and Garrett Wilson, I would like to give you guys a quick word for our friends and our partner over at Underdog. You can get Garrett Wilson's quarterback, Aaron Rodgers, higher than half of a total yard, which is your free pick for this week, plus a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash if you sign up using promo code Notorious. Promo code Notorious will get you the free pick, so you're going to match Mr. Rodgers, higher than half a total yard, with another player on Sunday or on Monday. And if both of those picks hit, you receive 3 times what you put into your pick'em. If you do multiple other picks, then the payout will be higher. So again, if you are new to Underdog, make sure you click on the link in the video description or sign up using promo code Notorious to claim your free pick, Aaron Rodgers higher than half a total yard, plus a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash. So back to Garrett Wilson with Davante Adams moseying his way on into the saloon. That's going to knock down Garrett Wilson a peg. Now, is it going to instantly knock him out of the park, Barry Bonds style? No, because I think in the first game there, Rodgers won't be getting force-fed the rock. Garrett Wilson and Davante Adams can coexist. Gun to the head, 3 weeks from now, pretend the matchup doesn't matter. Just some random game. Adams is going to be ranked higher than Garrett Wilson, but this week I'm still giving the nod to Wilson. I don't love the spot here up against the Pittsburgh Steelers in Pittsburgh, but they might put their best corner on Davante Adams. Garrett Wilson's been a top 5 wide receiver in back-to-back games. I expect a decrease in targets, but I think the efficiency is going to be better when Garrett Wilson no longer has to go up against the best corner. So again, not super ecstatic for him this week, but I do think he should finish inside the top 20. Next up, we got Juju Smith-Schuster. Corvette going up against the 49ers in San Francisco. Questionable with the hammy. He practiced on Friday. He should be good to go. Now, prior to the bye week up against the Saints, Juju Smith-Schuster looked like prime Juju back on the Pittsburgh Steelers, chilling with the Killer Bees, Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell, and Big Ben Roethlisberger. Juju had 7 receptions, over 130 yards as a top 14 wide receiver. This week up against the 49ers, while the matchup isn't as fruitful, I do believe that Juju will see a healthy dosage of targets to make him very reliable as a wide receiver 2 weekly. Next up, we got DK Metcalf, and we just talked about reliability. DK Metcalf is the opposite of reliability. This motherfucker motherfucker is the definition of boom or bust. DK Metcalf is either going to go out there, hit the defense with the 619 Rey Mysterio, hit him with the 5-knuckle shuffle, and finish as a top 12 wide receiver with number 1 wide receiver upside, or he's going to go out there and hit you with a pie to the face like he was a clown. Honk, honk, right? That's what he's going to fucking do to you. Wide receiver 63, 2, 12, 28, 50, and 51. Back-to-back weeks outside of the top 49. Wide receiver 51 and 50. The targets have been there. The volume has been there. But for some reason, this motherfucker can't stay consistent. But against the Falcons, in what could be a high-scoring game, we're going to rank him this high, even if it is scary to put him in your lineup. Next up, we got T. Higgins, Titty Boy T. Higgins going up against the Browns in Cleveland. He has really ramped things up. His first 2 games of the season, not too hot coming off the injury, but then wide receiver 4 in week 5, wide receiver 26 last week, 7 or more targets in 3 straight weeks. You know the volume's going to be there. He's a very reliable top 20-ish player. Next up, we got Devontae Smith going up against the Giants in MetLife. Now, the fact that A.J. Brown is back basically banishes Devontae Smith from being a top 12 guy in the rankings. Could he finish there with A.J. Brown there? 100%. But, and this is a big but, shout out to Kim Kardashian, when Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown are out there, you know who the head honcho is. You know who the head of the table is. Shout out to Solo Sikoa. It's going to be A.J. Brown. Devontae Smith is still a very safe bet, still a very reliable player, but the targets aren't as hefty. Final guy inside of this tier is Deebo Samuel going up against the Chiefs. Now, Deebo Samuel is another one of these guys that is boom or bust. But unlike DK Metcalf, the volume isn't as high. 5 targets in week 4, coming back from injury. Then 3, then 5. Now he's been the wide receiver 46, 77, and 10 in that span. To start off the season, wide receiver 12 and 17. Very topsy-turvy against a Chiefs team that's going to be able to push the game to potentially being very high scoring. I expect Deebo to be involved. He's going to get 2, 3, 4, 5, up to like 8 carries a game. The touchdown upside's there. The big play upside is there. But if you're comparing Deebo to Devonta, to Higgins, to Juju, right? Those guys are significantly more consistent, much safer players compared to Deebo, even if the upside of Deebo is 40-point fucking, I guess maybe 40 points a lot, but 30-point slap your fucking opponent right in the face with your cock type of deal here. Next up, we move to the 4th tier, the low-end wide receiver 2 tier, beginning with Maserati Marv. Now, earlier on in the week, I didn't think Marv was playing. Then he practiced on Thursday with a concussion. I think he will end up playing. Typically, when you have a concussion, it doesn't really impact anything because your brain's fucked up and then your brain's good to go. I'm as much of a doctor as Johnny Sins. That is not real, I was going to say financial advice, like my name was Caleb Hammer. This is not real doctor advice, medical advice. I'm not a doctor, but it's not like, oh, he hurt his fucking toe. His toe is going to be fucked up in the game. He's going to move a little bit slower. He's not going to be able to plant correctly. Should be good. Chargers defensive matchup, not the best, but it's fine enough. Marvin Harrison, another one of these guys that is just so up and down, but hopefully the consistent comes with him healthy. Next up, we got Davante Adams. Now, I want to rank Davante Adams significantly higher than this, but again, I don't love the matchup against the Steelers, and I'm also not 100% confident that he's going to be given clear wide receiver 1 duties instantly. Now, we've talked about this all week. There's a big difference between Davante Adams and Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper is ranked significantly lower. He is ranked as my wide receiver number 35. Why is Amari Cooper ranked lower? Because Amari Cooper and Josh Allen have never played together. It's going to be a lot more difficult to get integrated into the offense. Whereas Davante Adams knows Rodgers. They've been playing for a long time. All they know, they have these hand signals. You do this, you do that. Rodgers says fucking Y banana, whatever the fuck the play is. Spider Y banana, whatever the play is that John Gruden talks about. I can't think of it off the top of my head, and now someone in the comments will be like, Nick, that's not the full play call. It's this, and that, because I can't think, because it's 1 in the fucking morning. I'm trying to make all these videos for you guys. I hope you appreciate me, okay? But what I was I'm just fucking around, but Davante Adams, all he has to do is have Rodgers say, hey, you run this route, you go this far, you're good, this, that, the other thing. Yeah, turn around here, do the slant, cut at the 7-yard line, this, that, and the other thing. Like, you can basically just grab the football and go like this, like when you were a kid and you were on the schoolyard, you'd be like, oh, just go like this is your route, and you just draw it on the football. That's what Rodgers is going to do for Adams. He should be a top 24 receiver. But again, I can't rank him higher because there is the chance that he's out there just not doing too much. Next up, we got Tank Dell. No Nico Collins elevates Tank Dell last week to having his best game of the season as the wide receiver number 16. Now he's the clear number 2 behind Stephon Diggs, and that is great for Tank Dell. What I will note is if you're a Tank Dell owner and he blows up again, trade him. Trade him instantly. Because while I love Tank Dell and I love his talent, once Nico Collins is back, not going to be too good for Mr. Tank Dell, but again, he should be a reliable 24-ish, top 24-ish wide receiver now without Nico Collins. Next up, we got Brandon Ayuk. Now, Brandon Ayuk's another one of these guys that has been boom or bust, but he's only boomed once, and he's busted every single time like he's a gooner. Wide receiver 67, 40, 45, 61, 10, and 63. The targets have been all over the place like the mud on your face, you big disgrace, and if you drafted him, you're certainly feeling like one. Chiefs defensive matchup, not the best. Again, at some point, we're just going to have to start burying him more. I have him ranked significantly lower than expert consensus rankings. And honestly, if you're on the Patreon, when I update my rankings again, there's a chance that we drop him even further. At number 25, we got Brian Thomas Jr. going up against the Patriots. Brian Thomas Jr. laid a flat-out egg. Now, it wasn't technically a goose egg. He didn't score 0 fantasy points, but he scored just 6 up against the Bears. Not a great matchup for him. This is a solid bounce-back spot up against the Patriots in London. I will note, though, even up against the Patriots, Trevor Lawrence really concerns me, so that's why he's not ranked higher. If Brian Thomas Jr. just was in a different offense as the number 1 guy, you'd be sucking this motherfucker dry as in the high-end wide receiver 2 tier. Next up, we move to the high-end wide receiver number 3s. We just talked about the low-end wide receiver 2s, beginning with JSN, Jackson Smith-Njigba. Now, the fact that Tyler Lockett is on this team, and the fact that Tyler Lockett, even in his old age, is still seeing as many targets as he sees, is kind of a stab in the back of JSN. Now, it isn't a completely death. You know, it's not a stab, fucking enchanted sharpness 5 with the thing that turns you on fire from Minecraft, Diamond Sword, right? He doesn't have that, but definitely hurts, right? Because while the upside is there, the floor is a little bit lower. Now, he should see around 7-6 targets. He should finish as a top 36 wide receiver, which is why he's ranked in this range. The upside is obviously there up against the Falcons. It's there in any given game, but with so much Lockett, it does really hurt JSN. Next up, we got Tyreek Hill. Now, it pains me throughout my whole body thinking about ranking Tyreek Hill this low, because Tyreek Hill's another one of these guys where you can make the argument that he is the best wide receiver in the NFL. As a Dolphins fan, I love Tyreek Hill. He is the best player I've ever seen suit up in a Dolphins jersey. I was not alive to see Dan Marino or any of the other guys that you would have just wanted to give the Hawk to a special to on the Dolphins. So I love Tyreek. Week 1, he was amazing with Tua, wide receiver 4. He did the locked up celebration because they tried to arrest him at the start of the season. And then ever since then, it's been all downhill. The week prior to the bye, he saw his most amount of targets. So hopefully Huntley figured out, hey, you see Hill, you throw to Hill. Very simple. It ain't rocket science. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to figure that out. Up against the Colts is a great spot with Tua. I'd be sitting here talking about how he's the clear number 1 receiver. With Huntley, I have him ranked 6 spots lower than expert consensus rankings. Next up, we got Darnell. Here comes the Mooney. Now, Mooney, last week up against the Panthers, I sung his praises. I sung the gospel of Darnell Mooney. I said, Lord fantasy gods, give me Darnell Mooney as a top 24 wide receiver. I love it. And then you know what happens? Darnell Mooney fucked me in the ass without the use of lube, metaphorically, of course. Going up against the Seahawks, very good matchup. Problem, they kind of start to like Kyle Pitts more. They also use Ray McLeod. They use a lot of Drake London. They figured out the run game last week. So while I do think he's going to bounce back, I'm not going to bang the drum too hard because there are some clear bad things going on. Not bad things because the offense is good, but just some clear detractors from Darnell Mooney. And speaking of detractors, bad things, Jameson Williams. He comes out the gate of the season. 9 targets, 11 targets. Wide receiver 5, wide receiver 23, all fine and dandy. Right? Now, week 3 up against the Cardinals, they say, you know what? We gave you 9 or more targets in back-to-back games. How about 3? I was like, okay. What the fuck was that? 1 reception for 9 yards. It's okay, though. It's okay. He'll be back. And then next week up against Seattle, 2 targets. That doesn't make sense. But he got 80 yards and a touchdown, wide receiver 24. It's like, okay, that was strange. That was really, really strange. So they got the bye week. Okay, Dan Campbell's going to figure it out. We'll figure out how to get him more targets, right? Oh, he'll get like 5, right? Week 6 up in Jerry's world. He gets 4. 3 receptions, 76 yards, 1 rush, 11 yards, 1 touchdown. Wide receiver 17. So it puts me in a shitty position here because Jameson Williams is incredibly talented. But if you're going to get 3 to 4 fucking targets a game at the wide receiver position, how can I rank you higher than this? How? How can I rank him higher? How? Now, he could easily outperform this, but he's going up against the Vikings, a tough defense. I'm worried. Say I'm stupid. Nick, you're stupid. He only needs 2 targets to be good. Well, if he doesn't find a touchdown and gets 2 fucking targets, guess what? You're going to be down bad. So I'm nervous. I'm worried, so I'm not ranking him higher. Next up, we got Jordan Addison Ray going up against the Detroit Lions. Jordan Addison was fully ramped up in London prior to the bye. 3 receptions on 8 targets for 36 yards. Now, the game wasn't the best, but he saw his highest amount of targets on the season. He was coming off a game prior to that with 2 touchdowns up against the Packers. Going up against the Lions, not the best defensive matchup here for Jordan Addison Ray. But this is an offense that can put things into hyperdrive. Mono man Sam Darnold has been cooking like his name was Ratatouille. So going up against the Detroit Lions here, I think Addison could have another big performance. Next up, we got Demario Douglas going up against the Jaguars in London. Anytime you can play up against the Jaguars, that's a barbecue chicken matchup for Douglas. Back-to-back weeks with 9 or more targets, and Drake May turn this offense from having whiskey dick to being the hardest dick on earth, right? The Mario Douglas, 9 targets, 6 receptions, 92 yards, and a tug up against the Texans. Now, the fact that the game is in London could throw everything in rotation, throw everything out of the ordinary, you know, shit'll hit the fan. Now, it was very funny. I hate the Patriots. I'm a Dolphins fan. Nick, how do you hate the Patriots? I don't like any team that's in the AFC East. Sorry to tell you, my dad's a Jets fan. A bunch of my friends are Jets fans. If the Jets were in the Super Bowl, I would root for them to win the Super Bowl. People be like, Nick, you lose your Dolphins card. Well, my dad, I would like to see the Jets win for him. So that's why. Sue me. But Douglas, what the fuck was I talking about? What was funny was that Drake May said, they asked him, why should people root for the Patriots instead of the Jaguars in England? And he's like, well, we got England in the team name, which was just hilarious. Like, I like Drake May a ton. I hate that he's a Patriot. But top 8 wide receiver last week. Great matchup to repeat it. But the fact that it's in London is giving me a little bit of nervousness, if I'm being honest with you. Finally, we got my boy Wandale, Mr. 305, Dane County. Wan'Dale Robinson going up against the Eagles. He's going to get 9, 8 plus targets. He could get 14. He could get 12. That's already happened this season. Eagles matchup is good. Daniel Jones is, I could see Daniel Jones really shit in the bed here. I don't know, Jim. Like a fucking Tony Romo. I do like Wan'Dale. I do like him. He feels like a safe bet to finish in this range, like the wide receiver 3 range, the flex range. So Wan'Dale's always going to be ranked here as long as Daniel Jones keeps forcing him the ball. Final tier here, the low-end wide receiver 3s, the dart throws, the pray to the gods above that they hit Christian Kirk. Now, Christian Kirk is ranked this low because, for 1, I don't trust Trevor Lawrence, touchdown Jesus, and this offense. For 2, Christian Kirk hasn't looked the best this season, but he's seen multiple games with 10 or more targets, and if he gets 6+, he'll finish as a top 40 wide receiver. Nick, that didn't happen last week, but that was against the Bears. There's a difference between the Bears and the Patriots defense. Next up, we got Romeo Doubs going up against the Houston Texans. I'd love to rank him higher, but only 4 targets last week. He's coming off the suspension because he got real mad. He crashed out on the team. He's like, I need more targets. And they benched him for it. He baby raged out. He didn't show up to practice, I think. And then they were like, you know what? You're getting a suspension. And then he comes out the gate and he's hot. 3 receptions, 49 yards, and 2 touchdowns. But you can't really depend on just 4 targets. So that's why he's in this range, even in a higher scoring game. Plus, they have a lot of cooks in the kitchen there that can get the ball. Next up, we got Amari Cooper. Now, the reason why you play Amari Cooper is kind of just because he's Amari Cooper and because if he gets invigorated in the offense enough, he showed up there instantly. The Browns traded him. He got his ass out of there. He teleported straight to Buffalo. That's basically what happened. He was like, I'm tired of being here with Deshaun Watson, that massage bastard. And things have been terrible in Cleveland. And people are like, Nick, Amari Cooper isn't the same guy he used to be. Don't you remember when he was on the Raiders? Don't you remember when he was on the Cowboys? And then he was on the Browns and it was okay. But he's had 6 or more targets in every game. Every other game besides one game, he's had 8 or more targets. Now, does he instantly show up and get 8+ targets? Probably not. But up against the Titans, which is a fine matchup, if Josh Allen just feeds him the ball 6-7 times, he's going to have a fine enough game. But again, I can't be too confident in that take, right? I can't be, he's definitely going to step on in to getting a bunch of targets. I think we're going to have a lot better information by Sunday morning. Like, there'll probably be a report from Glazer or whoever reports this shit. Ian Rappaport, Adam Schefter, that's like, he's going to get this many snaps. If they say, he's going to be out there normal, it's like, okay, I like him here. If they're going to say, you know what, we're going to give him like half the snaps, and you back it up and you play Khalil Shakir instead. Next up, we got Xavier. Somebody touch my Leggett. Going up against the Commanders in Washington. Left hands up. Who are we? The Commanders. Now, Leggett has been solid with Andy Dalton. He's at a game as the wide receiver 13. Last week, wide receiver 34, touchdown in both games. Week 5 up against the Bears, it was basically a no-show, but he did get hurt in that game. He's coming off of the injury. Last week, he found the end zone in 2 of the last 3 games. He's a fine wide receiver 3/flex option. I'm never going to be the most excited about Leggett because they have Deontay Johnson, because Chuba Hubbard is addicted to scoring touchdowns, like Charlie Sheen is addicted to winning, and Papa John's is addicted to saying a word that he cannot say. But Xavier Leggett, he's fine here. He's fine. Next up, we got Xavier Worthy going up against the 49ers. Now, Xavier Worthy saw 6 targets in week 5 prior to the bye against the Saints. Normally, he's a 3 or 4 target merchant that needs a touchdown. Now, if he can reliably see 6 targets from Patrick Mahomes, we're going to have to start throwing some respect onto Xavier Worthy's name. Now, if he goes back this week to 3 or 4 targets, then I'll say, I told you so. He is a touchdown merchant. He needs the touchdown. Now, it's going to happen with Mahomes. But if you're only getting 3 or 4 targets, it's very hard to rely on you, which is why Jameson Williams is ranked so low. So thank you guys all so much for watching today's video. If you did end up enjoying, make sure you guys bro fist that fucking subscribe button like my name was PewDiePie. Hit a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. Follow me on Twitter or X if you would like, at NotoriousFantasy. Check out Underdog. Get the free pick, higher than half of a total yard for Aaron Rodgers, Mr. Discount Double Check. You match that with any other player playing on Sunday Night Football, not on the Jets, or on Monday, and you will get 3 times what you enter into your pick'em. If you do multiple other picks, the payout will be higher. So sign up now using promo code Notorious, or click on the link in the video description or in the pinned comment to claim your free pick. Aaron Rodgers higher than half a total yard, plus a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash. I love you guys more than you'll ever know. Thank you guys for all of the support. We are on our way to 40,000 subscribers, and without you all, the whole ship sinks. Check out one of the videos on your screen if you haven't seen them already. Have a great one. As always, good boy.